thanks so much for coming. We are very privileged to have, and I'm just going to pass over to Eden, alumni here at New College Stamford, and Tom. And they run Art School fashion label together. So the biggest welcome and the most loud round of applause for Eden and Tom.
So I was just going to start by playing our last show, just in case any of you haven't seen it. So I think it's playing here, which is going to be weird for me, but yeah. So here you go, you can play the show. So that was our Autumn Winter 19 show, which was in January. That was a lovely, moving image of me and Tom looking haggard. So I thought I'd just talk about how we got to there, really. So I went to Ravensbourne after I finished studying here, and I'd always had in my head that I wanted to go to St Martin's, but didn't, so kind of made it work. And Tom studied, so I studied fashion, like generic fashion at Ravensbourne, so you could do men's or women's, and you can chop and change. And Tom, what did you do?
I did art criticism at St Martin's, a course called Criticism, Communication and Curation, and it was all about, because I knew I wanted to go to St Martin's just to, by any way I could get in. I knew I wouldn't be able to get in if I applied for fashion, because that just wasn't good enough. So I did that course, and it's all about like working in arts but not doing art, kind of writing about it.
It's boring. But yeah, so that's what we both did. So whilst I was there, I quickly realised that Ravensbourne wasn't going to give me any opportunities really myself just by being there. So very, very quickly I understood that I needed to find people, and find people quickly that I could kind of start to work with. So I started working with this designer called Claire Barrow while she was still showing at London Fashion Week. And worked in her studio for 6 months, and then whilst I was there I met this other designer called Grace Wells Bonner, who had just graduated, and she was starting Fashion East. So I became her first intern, and I ended up working there for 2 years whilst I was studying. We won the LVMH prize, and she won Designer of the Year, and through her it really kind of pushed me out there, because by the end of the second year working there I was studio managing for her, so we were operating 45 stores, and yeah, it was really crazy. So whilst I was doing that I was also studying, so once I finished working for Grace I'd already met people like Lulu at her shows. Lulu's the boss of Fashion East, and then when I was doing my final collection, me and Tom were at one of our friends' presentations and randomly bumped into Lulu's assistant, who asked if I was going to apply to Fashion East. So that was the first time we even thought that it might be possible for me to get it. And then halfway through my final year, I began meeting with Fashion East. Grace and other designers that we knew kind of put a word in for me. So Fashion East is a non-for-profit organisation that it's been going for like 10, 12 years now, and basically every emerging designer and every kind of designer of note that's come out of London in that time has gone through Fashion East. So you are picked, they pick 3 designers a season, and you get it for 3 seasons, so a year and a half. But you can get dropped at any time during that point if you fuck up. So it's not kind of a certain guarantee to stardom. A lot of people go through that program and then you never hear of them again, really. So I applied just by being asked to go in for a meeting. Went in for this meeting. Tom wasn't allowed to come because they didn't know that we wanted to do this thing called art school. They thought that they were just going to give it to me. So went into the interview, spoke to Lulu, and then was kind of told that I could have it and that me and Tom could do it together and we could do this thing called art school. She really liked the idea of it being something more than just like another designer that has their name on the schedule, but something that's more of a movement, which was important to us because there's 2 of us that do it, but also we're supported by a whole group and community of creatives and friends that work into the brand, especially at the beginning. So yeah, we went on to the schedule. So we both graduated in October and then had our first show in January. So it was 4 months to do a collection. I made everything myself. It was a nightmare, crazy. So we did a presentation, and that was kind of a challenging thing because presentations are really boring. It's not a catwalk show, so you can't kind of captivate people in the same way. So we worked with this company called Theo Adams, and their amazing queer dance performance company, who worked with Tom to choreograph the show. So the whole thing was like a durational 2.5 hour performance piece in the old Selfridges Hotel. And the day after the show, we just did it. We weren't really thinking about it being something that was like going to make us a name. It all happened so quickly that it was just like the next thing that we were going to do. But then the day after the show, Lulu texted me a picture of US Vogue's homepage, and it was a picture of our collection saying like fashion's new ruler. So very quickly it kind of blew up for us overnight, and Vogue have been really supportive, and Edward, the new editor of UK Vogue, really supports us heavily. So we've been very lucky. Press have really understood what we're about, because it's quite a complex narrative to what we want our work to say, and it's much more about the message than just selling clothes. I think that's really important nowadays to be able to get further in your career in fashion. It needs to have something behind it. So how we work with people is that all of the shows are cast from a huge group like this of friends, people that we know. So we don't work with any agency models, and they're all sourced by us over a period of 3 months building up to the show. So each show shows identity rather than it having a theme, which is something I always really struggled with when designing clothes. It always comes from the person. So the people set the mood and the tone for the season. So like with the collection you saw a minute ago, that's a bit more of a serious collection. So there was people like Tom's old tutor from St Martin's, Natalie Khan. She also writes our press releases. She walked in the show. Sarah Blonstein, who's one of the other older women in the show, she's like a really legendary show producer, and she produces our shows. So we put her in the show to make her do it, basically. And then like a whole plethora of performance artists. There's students. There's Dawn Ward from The Real Housewives of Cheshire. So we managed to get her in the show, which is quite funny. So yeah, it's really a mixed bag of all these different personalities that come together to inform the collection as it's building. So quite often we'll do a lot of fittings throughout the season whilst things are ongoing, to kind of grasp the identity of what it's going to feel like. Do you want to talk a bit about like the shows themselves, Tom, like how you do
like the performance? We always, since we did our first presentation, it was kind of a 2-hour durational performance where we had our friends and some of the Theo Adams performers kind of in this space moving and pretending they were acting and kind of reacting with each other. And from there we then went on to our first catwalk show, and it was like all the ideas that you can think of when you're like, you can probably imagine if you're doing fashion now, like what would I do if I did a catwalk show, and you've got loads of ideas, and we basically tried to do them all in one show. So it was like a lot going on in this one show, but it was like lots of references to everything we've loved from growing up and loving kind of John Galliano shows at Dior or McQueen shows, all the things from the 90s that we probably absorbed growing up, we kind of processed and then reimagined with all our friends. So we had people like Josephine. There's probably pictures if it can
flip through.
Keep going through. I've got a few pictures of Princess Julia. I've got a few pictures of the McQueen and next door stuff. So it's not like we could ever replicate what the amazing things that McQueen and Galliano did, but it was like our homage, and that's kind of where we started. And I think that was a really important step that we had to take to kind of just not necessarily copy, but do our version of what we wanted to do. And then from there we found our own voice, I think, and our own way of working together and with these people. And from there we've kept refining and kept kind of tweaking this formula of exploring people, because they're at the heart of what we do, and like an element of performance. And I think as you've been saying, it's something that performance has become much more prominent in catwalk shows now. When you go on, look through the recent catwalk shows, there's a real trend of everyone's trying to do something really Instagram, really performative. So we've almost seen that now we have to really find our own voice of how do we do that in a way that's true to us.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we've always said is that the first with Fashionista, you really need to get something that's going to A, keep your slot, so that they're not going to drop you, but also B, separate yourselves from everyone else. And as much as like we're friends with a lot of the other designers on the schedule, a lot of the other designers on the schedule are seen as quite safe, and that's something we never want to be. You know, if our school's here for 5 years or 50 years, at least we want to have made an impact on the way that fashion is seen in London. So we really went at those first few collections quite, without even realising it, quite abrasively towards press. And I think our first catwalk show, the press reviews were really, really awful, and like really derogatory towards our models. A lot of our models are transgender, and we cut specifically. So when I'm cutting the collections, we construct them in a way that they're friendly for trans wearers. So we work a lot on the bias, which is Galliano. Galliano introduced that again after Madame Grey. And we work heavily with the bias, both in silk but also in suiting, so it has a natural give to it, so that it can wrap around trans wearers as they're going through hormone treatment. But that equally applies to a woman as, you know, she gets older. So there's kind of crossovers, and that's what we're quite interested in doing, is creating these discussions and crossovers between, you know, someone that buys our clothes in Selfridges that has no idea about our brand but has loads of money, and someone that we go out with on a Friday night in Dalston. So press really took a long time to understand that. We were very lucky that a couple of really important people in fashion, particularly Sarah Mower, who's like the UK Anna Wintour. She's the most important woman in British fashion. She really understood it and helped fight our corner. Because when you're showing something at Man, they're used to Craig Green, and they're used to Per Gottesson, and you know, even what Charles is doing is still seen quite gendered, because it's always on men and it's always cast from an agency. Whereas what we were doing is opening, you know, the whole of the Man catwalk with a trans woman, and, you know, straight white men who write for Vogue and GQ struggled to understand that at the beginning. But it's kind of grown and grown, and our last show with Fashionista really felt like quite a major breakthrough for us, which was in June of last year. And that was called High Concept Character, which was really kind of nailing down this idea finally of what we've been kind of growing to, of how all these different individuals dress, but also how together with us seeing those people, how it builds into a brand that forms its own identity. So it kind of built all up to that point. And we were really, really happy with how that collection came across, and the press was really good, which has really helped us now that we're showing alone on schedule. So after that show, we did a few like major, like big projects last year, namely with Rita Ora and Christina Aguilera, which was totally new for us because we've never done big celebrity stuff. I'd done it when I was at Grace's, but not for our own label. And those things are real machines. It was quite a complex thing. I'm not sure we'll be doing it anytime soon again, but it's an interesting thing seeing how a celebrity of that magnitude and their stylist, who are awful people, see your work, but also there's quite a lot of compromise that you have to make in doing it. And ordinarily we'd be given, for Rita's stuff, we're normally given like 48 hours notice max, so we'll stay up like 2 nights to make it, and it'll be for like, we did her girls video, we did Britain's Got Talent, like her first TV performance of that song. Christina Aguilera did her world tour, which was awful because she was in LA, so they would call me at 4 a.m. in the morning, try every day for 2 months, trying to work out what they wanted. So it's quite a complex thing building into that. And at the same time, we were working on January's show, so it was quite an intense time in the studio. And then one day we randomly got a phone call, which I passed to my assistant because I thought it was the British Fashion Council chasing me for money. So I wanted to hide from them. So my assistant answered the phone. She was like, "You really need to take this call, it's really urgent." I was like, "Oh my God, help me." Answered the phone. It was the head of the British Fashion Council. And we were nominated for Emerging Designer of the Year in the menswear category, at the British Fashion Awards, which was totally unexpected because I didn't think that we were anywhere on the radar of being nominated for something like that, particularly amongst brands that are 10 times bigger than us and have been going for like 5-6 more years than us. But really from there, it gave us a real renewed confidence in the trajectory of where we can take a brand like ours. I think for a community-based thing like we are, that involves a hell of a lot of people to make it work, to be nodded to in that way by such a traditional organisation is really exciting, because it shows that there's a breakthrough happening, particularly in the menswear system. And people are seeing it as much more of a fluid thing, which is really exciting. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. So at the moment we're preparing for the kind of daily cycle of how we run, because it's seasonal. We show in January and June. Between June and the next January is our long season, but then between January and June is really short. So we're in that season at the moment. So we've got another catwalk show on June the 8th, and at the same time we're doing all of the production for that collection. So what people probably don't tell you is when you're in this position, because no one told me this at university, that doing production consumes 90% of your time. So maybe we'll do 2 hours in an evening where we have to design the whole new collection in a day, really fast, and it has to be done, signed off, every detail, every look, all of the paperwork done, everything ready to hand over to the team the next morning, and we'll have 2-3 hours max, that's it, because it's such a fast turnaround that there's, we do our own shoes, so the shoes is another meeting, jewellery, hair, makeup, the performance of the show, how the show is going to be, the organisation, the set design. So there's like 30 million different components, which means the design process is actually a tiny, tiny part. And production consumes 90% of my time, because right now we've got 12 stockists for this season from 2 the season before. So it's a massive season of growth, but also all of those stores have to be delivered the week before the show. So I've got to make, between now and June, 500, 600 units of clothing to deliver the week before our next show. So it's a really, really quick, fast-paced environment, and learning to kind of manage all of that money and everything that happens has been a real learning curve for us, and we're still kind of learning how all that works. But what it means is we can now push the shows further, because people are actually buying it, which is good. So yeah, do you want to talk a bit more about maybe our models, Tom? Who they are?
Yeah, should we keep going through the pictures? Oh yeah, so that's what I was saying about Galliano, and that's Josephine, one of the girls trans girls that we use a lot. Yeah, we change every season. We kind of work with, we have some models that kind of we've kept throughout each season, each show. We think they're right for the collection, and because maybe they're quite transformative, and we like to show people again, but maybe do like a different kind of look for them. It's all very much inspired by like how we're always inspired by people, but it's very much also how we see them as well. So it's like this kind of two-way thing where it's like what they kind of inspire us, and then how we see them and want to kind of create them into something that we see them as. Because I suppose that's the thing that comes from when we're working together creatively. There's not really like, oh, now we're working, now we're not. We're always not work because we love it, so it's not work, but it's like you're always thinking, always kind of discussing, and you'll see something, you'll be like, oh, them, or this idea, or this. So it's really fluid, and I think that's how in the shows we use people, like we use Sarah Blonstein, who was this amazing boss woman who was producing all the London Fashion Week shows, and we went to a meeting to put the show on, and she was like, well, why didn't you ask me to do it? Just saying it off the cuff. And we were like, well, do it then, you're amazing, be involved. And it's that kind of thing where it is a real community, it's like a natural experience. And so it's such a lovely thing to be able to design clothes for people in their real sense, and it's when they come to the catwalk and they have that moment of being able to walk the catwalk, you really get that sense that they've really got something out of it as well. Like we had the lady at the end who was wearing that white dress. She's called Alison, and she bought a coat of ours that was on sale on Matches from ages ago. She bought that and then got in touch with us, and then we were like, oh, come meet us, because she was coming to London for the day, and we met her at the studio, and then she was just this amazing woman who she's like a politician for diversity somewhere down in Cornwall or somewhere. So we were like, oh, come and be a part of it. So it's all these different people coming together that we kind of met throughout our life doing this. So
it's quite a magical experience as the show builds. So we'll do quite a lot of rehearsals. We work with we've worked with a few choreographers. We work with for Spring Summer 18, Les Child, who is one of the amazing people in the film Paris is Burning, an amazing Vogue choreographer, and kind of a legend. So we worked with him for a season, and now we work with a choreographer called Holly Blakey. She just did the Burberry show for Riccardo Tisci, and she's really grown with us, and kind of her ascent to being known as a choreographer has grown as she's worked alongside us, which was also grown. So it's been nice to have that kind of building relationship with her. So we'll have like a week of rehearsals the week before the show where the collections are being finished, and you then really get to see the identity kind of take place. And we've had some amazing people in the shows in the past, like Harriet Verney, who's the editor for Love magazine, and Katie Grand. She's the niece of Isabella Blow, so she would come in with all these stories about Isabella Blow and Alexander McQueen, and she's got like Isabella Blow's bed in her bedroom. It's just like an amazing like narrative of things. And we've had Monroe Berdorf, who is this amazing, the most inspiring woman I've ever met. She's this trans woman that was fired by L'Oreal for comments that she made on Instagram. And she's just the most amazing person to have around, and seeing how these kind of art school icons, we call them, and that could be people that have just been walking for us from my graduate collection, or it could be people like Monroe that have come across us and we have worked with them for a season. They really form like a basis that instills such a confidence in these younger kids that studying at a university and we just find at a party, or so it really becomes like a very close-knit community building towards the show. And I think you can really see that in the way that everyone kind of supports each other as they're walking, because it's a really big thing. The shows are getting bigger, and like that show Space, the catwalk's like 100 meters long, so if you've never done it before, it's a bit of a scary, daunting process. But yeah, I think it's really exciting. The other thing I was going to talk about is the movement of designers that's happening in London at the moment. I think from when I was in your position, it would always feel such quite a far away thing, but actually when you arrive in London and you kind of go out a bit and you meet people, it's actually really easy and everyone's really friendly. I've not met anyone that's been arseholey, like actually from a designer's perspective. It's always the people like in the middle that are the pain in the arse. But it's really exciting, and there's a real movement of people that are coming from places. I don't have any money, Tom doesn't have any money, our families don't have money, we've came from nothing and we still have nothing. We still struggle to pay our bills every month, but it is possible. And that is true that there's a lot of my peers that have really rich parents and they're riding off the back of them to get further, and they live a much more comfortable life than we do. But we've been very lucky that the press supports more, so you don't need money to make it work. You can get there. It's just a hell of a lot of hard work. We work probably 17 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week for the last 3 years. So this is the first time I've been anywhere near home in like 3 years. But if you are serious about it, there's an end point to that, and you can see it. Like, we can see how the business has already grown. So you can see in another 2 years you'll be in a much more stable position. But it still makes every day a real challenge, and you have to be really good at juggling a lot of different things. And I'd always advise going into it with someone else, whether they're going to be like me and Tom are, or whether it's someone that's really close to you that's a stylist, or any part of that team. I think it's really important that you have 1 or 2 people that are in your corner, because it's really hard to do it alone. My best friend that I studied with, Paria Farzaneh, she's in New Gen, and all of her stuff's Iranian textile work, and she's really strong, very strong-minded, but has really struggled over the last year because she's blown up in the way that we have, and she's on her own. So her mum is actually now her studio manager and has moved to London to be there for her. And you see that quite often. Simone Roche's parents, all of them are involved in the business. Craig Green's sister, Christopher Kane's sister is his studio manager. So it's always a level of involvement. I think it's really important to grow as a group because you'll get further, and being a nice person gets you a long way, I think. So yeah, that's basically my life story. So yeah, should we do questions?
Let's do it,
Yeah.
Can we give them a round of applause?
Thank
Yeah, we've got questions from you, which I'm going to go through. But I'm going to be really selfish, and I've got my own question first.
Okay.
So I love what you talk about. Kind of, it's a movement, and I've kind of read you kind of speaking about living your own fantasy and being your own icon. Did you know that from the very beginning when you started art school? That's what you wanted to do, or was that kind of a long process?
I think it's been quite a long process. It kind of came together because when I was doing my graduate collection, I already knew that I might get Fashion East, so Ravensbourne stopped really supporting me because they couldn't really teach me anything because I didn't care. So Tom moved into university with me, and we finished the year with him helping me every day. And as part of that, we started bringing in our friends to model the clothes without even thinking about it. So it kind of built from there, really. But also, Tom was instrumental into starting this because I would try absolutely everything that I was making on Tom. So it built this idea of us creating these different moments and fantasies, I guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was at the beginning because, like, we had all the friends come in when we were at Ravensbourne. We had everyone. Well, you really pushed to have those people.
And the tutors are like, shit.
Yeah.
All these crackheads have just walked in the building.
They walked in the London graduate show.
Yeah.
Normally they have all the standard models, but we really thought to have
We'd have screaming
our
matches.
people. So that was a real integral part at the beginning. We never thought for a second, this is going to be on model girls and model guys. We knew it was about us because it was from us, and it was just from us two, and you putting stuff on me. It was just like the extended idea of like a muse, but then kind of blown up, and we're looking at several muses, and then it just grew from there.
Wow, great.
We've got a question from Lucy, who's on the extended diploma in fashion. What inspired you to create a genderless fashion label?
Well, again, I think it just came from the group of people that was around us at the time. We were really lucky that when we started going out in London, Charles Jeffrey just started doing Loverboy, so we were in all of the Loverboy campaigns, and we were really close friends with him at the time. And it was about a group of like 20 people that worked with him on Loverboy, including Nurse, and would go to all the nights, and it was kind of a bit of a way of life for like 8 months. So that really opened my eyes into gender identity and how I identified, and that I met so many people, we both did, that it just kind of naturally happened that then those were the people we found exciting and important to put out there into the world. And I think so often, whether it's someone that's at St Martin's that's just arrived in London, that's nobody, or someone that's like Princess Julia, who's like a nightclub legend and lived in a squat with Boy George in the 80s, these people haven't been given voices for so long, and they've been overlooked for so long, and I know how that feels. So I think it's really important that we have a platform to be able to give these people a voice and put them out there as our version of Kate Moss or whoever, and we think that's more important, I guess. So that's how it kind of formed, and it's just grown and grown and grown from there, really.
Wow.
Got a question from Tasha, diploma in fashion, first year. How has your education affected your evolution in fashion?
Well, I had a really good tutors here, And they instilled in me how much I needed to fight to get there, and have been a constant personal support to me. I call them all the time, and it means a lot to me to be able to have them here, you know. So I was very, very lucky. Use them because it doesn't exist anywhere else. Ravensbourne was fine. St Martin's is fine, but it's really rare you'll get someone that personally invests in you. So take the time to appreciate it, because it's probably the last time you'll have that. And I think not being at St Martin's for me actually benefited me, because it made me stand out massively from the crowd. And I think Tom not coming from a fashion background as well, it gave us kind of a different perspective on things. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think you guys are clearly amazing, because he was the hardest working person I've ever met since I met you, and just the passion and drive that Eden has is just unmatched by anyone. So I think that's so important, and you guys are so lucky to be here. So it must be an amazing place to study. So yeah, I think that just take everything you learn now and run with it, and don't forget all those things, because you'll need them in life.
That idea of that fight, working hard, you talk about 17 hours a day, is that the most important thing in your career, do you think, that drive?
Yeah, I think so. We've never taken no for an answer. You know, we've faced really awful situations, and there's so many traps that you can fall in, and you know, it's constant struggle for money, constant, and I don't do well. I've called Rachel countless times crying down the phone because I don't know how to cope with something, because you know, we're 24 and 25 and you know, the shows cost 30 grand now. It's like crazy. So we're having to find where do we get that money from? We can't even buy like a loaf of bread. So we're having to constantly source money, constantly move things around, constantly struggling to deliver orders. And you have to have this fight inside of you that knows that you want to do it. You know, I come off the kind of generation that got lost in people like Alexander McQueen, and those people don't really exist in fashion anymore, but they allow you to believe it's possible. So I think we've just kept pushing, and you get to a point then when you think, well, I've fought too hard now to let it go, so I'm just going to keep going. There's a lot of sport brats in fashion that just moan, and then you discover their parents just gave them 10 grand to like have a nice time in Paris while we're there trying to count the last euros to be able to get home from Paris. You know, it's really double standardised, but 9 times out of 10 the people that have less achieve more, I think.
Great. Question from Giovanni in Diploma in Fashion, first year. Were you ever concerned about the way your fashion is perceived by the public?
Oh no. No, I don't know if we really you imagine it when you're designing that it's like for the public, and I think as well fashion's quite like in a little bit of a bubble, so you're thinking more about like the fashion people, like what are they going to think of it. So I think we think about that, but I don't think we think, you know,
No.
say, oh, the public in terms of a larger sense, because I don't know what they would think of it. Probably think.
You've talked about reviews. How
Yeah.
important are they to you?
Reviews are kind of really important and not important at all at the same time. It's a really difficult one. I'm quite good with dealing with these review people, because after that, so the Spring Summer 18 collection, where I got all the bad reviews, I quickly learned how to speak to them. I realised that I was being far too naive. I need to be manipulative. So we made the decision that I would then only speak to press after the shows. I have a script in my head. I know what it's going to be like. I'll try and find out the way that they're thinking of writing the reviews that season. So 9 times out of 10 the way reviewers work is, particularly people like Vogue, they'll have like an overarching idea of what they want to push for the young designers reviews, so like ethical or diverse, or like this season it was like, God, they're so young to have achieved this much. So then you kind of can work the review and what you say to fit into that, which helps you get a better review in the long run. But it is really hard, you know, for us, we're putting people, our friends, in a public domain where thousands and thousands of people are going to see that show. So if there's a bad review and they're criticising the models or the way that, you know, they look, that's really hard to cope with for me, I think. But yeah, it's kind of mixed, really. You then have to kind of take it with a pinch of salt, because at the same time, like next season, you might get a really bad review if you've had like the most amazing review the season before. You don't know.
Great.
Next question from Naya. Also on the diploma in fashion first year. Would you say that your fashion design is empowering?
Hopefully, yeah. I think that's the one thing we set out to do, is empower the people who we see wearing the clothes. So like gender non-conforming people, non-binary people, trans people, older people, you know, all these people that we want to wear the clothes. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that we always aim for, is to make people feel amazing and feel really strong.
Definitely.
I've heard that kind of Vivienne Westwood has tried to contact some of the people that you work with. Yes, she has. So that idea of your designs being empowering and people want to kind of be inspired by it and kind of take it. Is that a good thing, bad thing, or a mixture?
It's definitely, well, it's a mixture, but I'm quite outspoken, so I'm not really happy about it, because Vivienne Westwood's got absolutely zero to do with this young queer community, and it's really dangerous that I get asked this all the time in the show reviews every season, because people are aware there's a real trend happening, like trans is a trend now, and that's so dangerous because it's real people's lives. It's my life, it's Tom's life, it's our friends' lives, and I'm not going to stand by and let idiots like Vivienne Westwood take advantage of it, try and steal my models and wave $5,000 at them to keep them on a nil retainer so they can't model for anyone else for a year. You know, it's quite dangerous, and it's definitely not coming from a good place. So we've had to kind of learn to protect ourselves, but also to try and start protecting our models as well. So we'll put certain things in place to make sure that they're protected. And if someone really starts to get a lot of gigs, try and recommend them to an agency that can look after them. Because the first thing they'll do in somewhere like Vivienne Westwood is ask, do you have an agent? And if you say no, then you're going to be on a nil retainer, they're not going to pay you anything, but you also won't be able to get any other work because you've signed a contract. So it's, kind of a toxic thing. I mean, you've got brands like Margiela, like Galliano's talking about it quite a lot, and I respect him and respect what he's doing, and it feels like it's coming from a place of the people that work with him as interns, and it's being driven quite a lot by quite a young group. So that makes you feel a little bit better, and also he's not just picking random people off the street to be in a show. But yeah, it's a weird thing at the moment, because it feels like brands like us and Charles have been kind of thrust into the mainstream quite quickly, and that's really now starting to get into the heads of the bigger brands.
Absolutely, competition. Question from Isabel, who's also on the diploma in fashion. What initially inspired you to go into the fashion industry? Tom, should we start with you?
Well, I didn't know if we all really went into the fashion industry, because it's like, I just knew I was, creative and had a lot of ideas and wanted to go to London, and, went out and was dancing and was doing all this. And I think that if you're someone who wants to just go and be involved in London, you can find yourself immersed in it quite easily, because it's all kind of there to get involved in. So, but I dreamt of being doing fashion since I was really young, and watching the fashionista designers that we eventually ended up doing fashionista. So it's crazy, but they were people that I was just absolutely obsessed with, and watching, because they always just produce amazing work, and Meadham Kirchhoff and Louise Gray, people like that. So I think fashionista, and seeing the London fashion and what it was producing when I was like, at similar college age, that's probably what made me think, God, I wish I could do that. I wish I could be involved and create work like that.
And then I guess I did an art course here before moving to Rachel's course, because I was taught at home for my school life. So I didn't have many qualifications and, didn't have much opportunity. So it's kind of my escapism, because I didn't also know anyone my own age when I came here. So it was kind of a awakening. I got a small group of friends that I still stay in touch with that I met here, and that kind of gave me the confidence that then when I moved to the fashion course, it kind of clicked. And then I knew that I was better at that than doing other art mediums, and that I could probably make a career of it. I'm quite organised, and that's really important for fashion. If you're organised and kind of dedicated, then you can get quite far on that alone, even if there's people that aren't talented that you see that are really good business people, and that's got them far. So I kind of knew that there was a chance, but then it wasn't really until then I started working for Grace that I really knew that I could definitely get somewhere quite quickly, because I was just really lucky to get that job at the time that I did, and working with her, she's one of the most amazing designers I've ever met, and the way that she works and her practice, and every part of it felt really like we were pushing it to places that London wasn't even ready for at the time, and it all happened really quickly, and we went to Paris and she won the LVMH prize, and doing that was like absolutely unbelievable, and then to be like nominated for the same award that I won with her when I was working for her was really surreal, and she was like sat on the next table to me. It's like, how the hell have we got here? It's kind of I guess.
You mentioned Fashion East being not-for-profit, and I know, especially in the arts, not-for-profit organisations are a real step up for people to kind of get to the next level in their career. Do you think the fashion industry would be lesser if Fashion East didn't exist, or you hadn't been part of it?
Absolutely. Like every J.W. Anderson, Christopher Kane, Kim Jones, Roxandra Linsick, Louise Gray, Nazir Mazar, Charles, Grace, Liam, literally everyone you can think of has been through that programme, and Lulu's the most amazing woman for giving it. She's picking people off instinct, and that's what she did with us. We didn't really have very much going to her, but she saw something in us. So, it needs to be protected, and it's kind of scary for them at the moment because Topshop have just pulled out their funding, so they're having to kind of go from show to show a bit at the moment, which is scary, because if Fashion East dies, there'll be a real change in the way we see new talent emerge, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So next question from Lucy on the extended diploma in fashion, second year. Do you make your models walk in a specific way? You've talked about really working closely with them and them owning it. In the choreography of the walk, how do you work with them?
Not really. We do like a day where I try and get as many models. Obviously it's hard because everyone's quite busy, but we try and get as many models as we can in this space. In one of the shops that stocks us, they have this big store they've not opened yet, so they have this basement, and we try and get as many people there just to listen to the music and do a walk. And it's not really, because we're normally thinking about, we see them walk and then we listen to the music and then we kind of look at what they're already doing and kind of go from there. And we're not really trying to be like, oh, we want you to do this instead. It's not, it's always comes from the model themselves, and then maybe enhancing it. So maybe they do something with their hands already, or maybe they've got a certain attitude about them and it's just about enhancing that. Or and then Holly that we're working with at the moment, she's really sensitive and can really kind of pick out something and maybe make a gesture of it. But over the last few seasons we've been playing with, how far do we push it, and trying to sometimes be quite subtle, sometimes do something that's a bit more. Because in this one they were just kind of, someone did a circle and then someone did, but it was quite subtle really. But people still picked up on, compared to other shows, people still think, oh, it's really theatrical. Because I think that the models look theatrical anyway, just because they're not models. So I think it's always going to look quite othered. So we don't make anyone walk in a certain way, but we do kind of want to create a story.
You could tell it was quite liberating for them, that they felt quite free. Like you said, you could see the personalities coming through.
Yeah, hopefully.
That last bit where, was it Alison, did you say?
The white dress woman.
Yeah, who starts moving. And
that's Slid.
Oh, Liz, sorry.
So Slid's this amazing trans performance artist girl. She's brilliant. She's called Slid from the Fabric Flats.
She is having the fit, which was a bit controversial. This one was said to me.
Yeah,
after,
this
like,
reviewer was like, my niece has God knows what and she fits all the time, so I don't know what you're saying with that.
Well, I understand, but I think it's one of those things that just happened in the moment. So actually, during that day where everyone was coming in and we were listening to the music, and also I think it's funny how much thinking about the show now, watching it back, I was like, God, I blocked it all out. Actually, I can't.
Trauma.
It's trauma. But the music, like, I don't know if it sounded as intense here, but when it was loud over the speakers, it's quite like intense and it's got this kind of dark Berlin-y kind of vibe to it, and so much of that kind of came after we'd done the fittings, and you're in such, well, when we have everyone, we've casted the whole show, we've tried all the looks on them, and Holly suggested that piece of music, and it's just like something that was so intense, and I feel because you're in such an intense and stressed probably time that you go, that's the energy that you want. So it's so funny that it becomes, the show itself is that sort of feeling that you're all feeling at the time. Like maybe that's why you watch the Chanel show and it's all very calm and like, you know, because it's probably that's just what they want, that's how they feel. But yeah, so, and then the movement came from that, and so this fitting idea, I think I just said to Sid, oh, can you do that? Can you just kind of go for it and do this shaky movement, you know, and fit it out a bit, and that's just what happened. And I just think it was because that was the energy that you feel. It's so kind of probably
Penta.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like, hopefully next time...
But then people read into that and say it's a comment on Brexit, and you're just like, what? You know, it's this, that and the other. It's quite interesting how our, like, very, very loose way of working suddenly becomes, like, social commentary of the political landscape. It's quite
fascinating, yeah. Next question from Harriet on the Diploma in Fashion first year. Had you always had a vision for your fashion brand?
Not for the brand itself, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I was very determined that that's what I was going to do. I was going to have my own brand, and that I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And I also believed that I could do it. I think even when I was having really, really difficult times, I knew that I could do it. I still believe that because I've met half the people that are in my peer group, and I know that I have a lot more going than they do. So if they can do it, I can definitely do it, you know. But the vision for the brand has just kind of evolved over time. It's become quite refined now, which is quite nice because you start to become a bit happier with what you're doing. The first 3 collections were actually just packed away in boxes, so we don't have to look at them anymore, because it's kind of like that was a moment to build the brand, but it takes time for you to be happy with your work, and that's what's so good about Fashion East, because it gives you those 3 seasons to make the mistakes before you're going out on your own on the schedule. If we'd have done that first catwalk show, in January, it would have been a disaster because it just would have been confused and you don't know what you're really trying to say. Whereas we've had that time as part of a group show to build the identity.
Question from Jodie on photography course. What are your views on consumerism and the fashion industry?
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, we don't really shop anymore because we've not got any money, and we'll just shop at charity shops. And I think that, I don't know, do you have shops around here, guys? What's the shop? So I don't know. It's
Tom's not the right one to speak about consumerism, because when I moved in with him, he had a room that was full of 5,000.
It was from charity shops. So
mine was a clothing.
I had a problem, but I'm through it now. But I worked at Harrods for a long time as well, and that was a really interesting, eye-opening time just to understand who's buying all this stuff. Especially, I mean, what's interesting about fashion is all the people that want to go into the industry are us guys, and we're kind of from all different parts of the UK, and we really dream about fashion, and you work and you want to create this product, but it's interesting because you're probably never going to see that other side of it, where who are the people that are buying fashion. So we've had to, through, like you were saying, through Fashion East, find out in your head, what is it that people want to buy to then make this a sustainable thing. It's all good and well talking about creating our world and in this fantasy of characters, but there's got to be a product to it as well.
90% of the clothes that we now do, so you have your seasonal range plan. We have to be really boring now and work to things like that. So we don't just start putting stuff on a page and being this is this, this is this. we have a range plan which has to have so many units for so many different styles. So you have like trousers, dresses, tops, shirts, other things, and you'll put numbers of how many you need. So say I need 5 trousers, different styles in the collection, 7 jackets in the collection, and then you have to work from there. And then on top of that, you have carryover styles. So the stores that buy you, we have quite a lot of big department stores that buy us. So they want to know before your next show what carryover you're doing, which means if they've bought a jacket from Spring Summer 19, they'll want the same jacket again in the Autumn Winter 19 show, but they'll want it in the new fabrication. So then that fills up quite a big chunk of your new collection already, is the previous season, but you know, made a little bit nicer, maybe you've refined the pattern a bit, and it will have new fabrication to it. So it actually means like seasonally you're then only creating maybe 10 or 12 new styles a season, because it's a business, and if you can't, that's the main problem with people in our position. They don't see it as that, they see it as a creative output, which is true, but primarily it's a business. So if we want to keep our community going and keep Arsenal going, we have to make money, and we need to sell the collections. So it has to start from there, you know.
A connected question from Christina about how do you consider sustainability when designing and creating your collections?
Yeah, we don't really, which is not anything against sustainability, but it's just not like how we built our brand. Recently, if you're watching the LVMH prize, is this prize they do by Louis Vuitton, Mary Hennessy, the conglomerate that owns all the big brands in the world. They do a yearly prize and they give to designers, and we applied for it, but we weren't shortlisted. But a few friends are up for it at the moment, and this year there's a massive, the whole thing of it, everyone's got some element of sustainability to them. So it's a massive thing at the moment. I think if you're interested in fashion, definitely we're the generation now going, you know, that are going to be able to really change the way things are. It's just so that we have a different story to our brand, which is about queerness and non-binary. So that's how we built it. And
our clothing is quite luxury, the stuff that actually sells. We don't really sell that many t-shirts, so it's always the high-end pieces that are the ones that are sold. So actually we're selling a smaller amount of units to a store anyway.
We're only making stuff when it's required, that's the thing. I mean,
and it's all made in London, so we don't export manufacturing, and all of our leather is byproduct leather from the meat industry. So there's elements to it, you do what you can, but yeah, I think
it's things like Boohoo and ASOS and Pretty Little Thing. Those are the ones which are just scary, that you've got these really, 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 you can't, like £5, £2 things that people are buying every week because they want newness, which is totally understandable. That's like sociological, people want to shop and buy and get new things for the weekend. So it's about figuring out now, how do we do that in a way that is sustainable? Maybe it's about doing more customisation, DIY on your own things to feel like it's new, as just chop it up. That's what I do. Chop something up when you want to feel fresh.
I've got about 6 questions left.
One more.
So one more. Yeah, shall I do what? I think this is a good one to end with, actually. From Rose, the player in fashion first year. What has been the most difficult thing about starting your own business?
Where do I start? Money is a real issue. If you don't have money, then it's going to be a tough ride, I can tell you that. Money, coping with money, either when you get an order or don't. And also, having to continue pushing 24 hours a day, every day. And that can be so hard at some times, especially when you've spent like 3 months doing a show and then the next day you have to go to Paris to sell it. So, yeah.
But on the plus side, what's in the
Plus
side?
But
But it's all worth it.
It's all worth it.
It's all worth it in the end. Chase your dreams.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much,
Thank
you two.
you.
One last round of applause for Edith and Tom. Thank you so much for visiting, and hopefully
Pleasure.
we'll stay in contact with you and follow
Absolutely.
your careers. So thank you once more.
Thank you.
Thank you.